Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the Incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, here helping healthcare plans, providers, and the employers with their population health improvement programs. So, Nick, one of the areas that's been discussed a bit is this whole thing of how close together or far apart do you space those vaccines? And apparently, there's some new thinking based on perhaps some side effects.
Yeah, so we've known for a while that there are side effects. I mean, that's never been a new piece of data. I mean, I think that there is side effects with almost all treatments that we have, and it's always a risk reward ratio. But one of the things that I think people have been increasingly concerned about is the challenge with inflammation around the heart. So this myocarditis. One of the things that people may or may not have noticed is that with vaccine, so with the regular delivery of the vaccine, the two dose, you get the same dose, although they're different doses depending on what you pick. But when it comes to the booster, we've seen a reduction in the dose. And now there's some thinking that perhaps increasing the time between the vaccine doses. And I'll be the first one to say that, you can go back and look at my history and say I called out the UK for, guessing their way out in terms of the schedule of vaccination. Maybe that was a little bit unfair, but I still felt like they didn't have the data. But maybe their approach of, so what they did was they focused on getting the first dose into arms to as many people as possible and extended the duration between the two doses. And I think there's a ready-made data set that we may be able to mine into to actually see if that reduced the very small instance of heart inflammation. And it's particularly troubling because it occurs in the younger generation more than older people. So, those are the people that you want to protect the most.
Absolutely. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, as a physician, there's myocarditis associated with getting COVID too, right?
Yes, that's right. And that's obviously worse, let's be clear. so, but, the younger you are, the tougher that sort of decision. And, that's even why some vaccines have not been approved and, maybe preferred for younger generation. And indeed, I think even, was there a gender difference, if I recall?
Might have been more in younger males, I think.
Yeah, it always seems to be, well, that's not true. It's not always the boys. But in this particular instance, that was my recollection, although that may not be true.
Right, right. And the other thing that was interesting was this NPR article that talked about this whole issue of the future of the pandemic looking clearer as we learn more about infection. What did you see in that you found interesting, or how different was it from some of the things we've been discussing?
Well, let's be clear. Crystal would not seem opaque by comparison. I don't know that we are seeing. Maybe things are clearing up a little, but they're still awfully cloudy. This virus continues to surprise us. That said, what we've seen with the latest variant is that it's run through a fair proportion of the population. So you were either vaccinated or you got it, or you got both of those instances. So you could have been vaccinated and got it and would have had a milder version of the disease. We've reached a point where an awful lot of people have had it. And at this point, we're looking at what this is going to mean in the future. Does this move to a seasonal or wave-like instance of the disease? And what does it mean in terms of all of the public health measures and what's appropriate? And we're seeing some pullback by countries. We talked about Denmark last week. Based on the science, they've said they're stopping their COVID protocols. I think we've seen it in some countries. Obviously, the big thing is, can we open up international travel? That's, where there's a lot of economy tied up. And commerce. There are still some countries that are pretty tightly locked down, but I read something talking about New Zealand is potentially open to Americans this spring, which seems relatively soon. What are the requirements going to be? I think we're going to be living with this, but it's not endemic, right, Fred?
Yeah, it just seems to be that, And there are all sorts of different terms for endemic or different explanations of what they mean by endemic. And I've heard some that say it's just where you have a flat level of the infection going on or the disease within your population. Others will say, no, there is some variation. Obviously, what we're seeing with this is cyclical. And you can see it go up. Here in Florida, it seems to go up every July, comes back up in December, drops off. And it's interesting because I've sort of taken it myself and looked at how do I schedule various events or travel or things, potentially family trips, and try to hit them during the lulls. And I think that's something we'll see over time. And then the question becomes, as we may see a different variant, obviously Omicron had much lower abilities to create severe infection in people, but it was spread more. Does the next one like that or not? And just adjusting what you may need to do over time. But I do think we're beginning to see, this ability to loosen up a bit, and hopefully we don't see another form of Delta or something come out that might evade something.
Yeah, it is moving to a cyclical. At least it seems to be implied that it's moving to a cyclical instance. And you and I have talked a lot about this in our discussions. This is always about assessing your own personal risk and taking the appropriate measures. This was true, for our discussion on masks. You asked me directly what I wear, and I wear a lower grade mask. I feel less at risk for a variety of reasons, and this is going to be true for travel. It does bother me slightly because now that means when you're planning travel, you're going to have to think about this. And the one thing that the airlines are good at is surge pricing. So they're going to start pricing based on when COVID travel is open. Oh my God, the prices go up. It's like the summer holidays.
That's a fascinating idea there, Nick, and probably right on target. But it is really interesting to watch, and I think we can begin to do things, I think, as long as we, as you say, look at our individual risk and reward with those types of activities and figure out what we're willing or not willing to be able to risk. The other interesting point about that NPR story was they're still looking at what the date is for those over 50. It looks pretty good. And so who knows? We'll see how that impacts some of us more elderly folks here. But once again, thanks, Nick.
Speak for yourself, Fred.
I've got the gray hair to show it there. So it's another fantastic week, Nick. Thanks so much. And for those who are watching, if you'd like to get more information, this is Fred Goldstein. Please go to accountablehealthllc.com.
And this is Dr. Nick. I'm the Incrementalist here with Incremental Insights for better business, better health.